Welcome into this week's edition of Cavaliers Weekly on the Bleacher Report. Appreciate everyone for tuning in. And for the first time since we've started this Cavaliers Weekly series, the Cleveland Cavaliers have lost 3 straight games. In fact, it's the first time in the Cavaliers Weekly series that they've lost 2 consecutive games. So this is a bit of an unfamiliar territory to be sitting in right now, talking to you guys about the 56-13 Cavaliers. Lo and behold, at the end of the day, I don't think it's time to start panicking too much about this Cavaliers squad. And we're going to go through a couple of the areas in which Cleveland has struggled over their losses to Orlando, to Los Angeles, and Sacramento, and figure out how to fix them. Which areas need to be concerned about and addressed prior to the start of the playoffs, and which are simply 3-game blips and something that at the end of the day, you simply can't control, which I do think part of this 3-game slip-up is out of Cleveland's control. So let's dive right into things. First and foremost with the numbers. The Cavs, post-All-Star break, had won their first 12 games. They had won 16 in a row before losing 3 consecutive. And when you look at their numbers pre-All-Star break and post-All-Star break, mind you now they're 12-3 post-All-Star break, you're not going to see a giant drop-off. The numbers are actually pretty consistent across the board in terms of the Cavs' scoring output. 122.7 points per game prior to the All-Star break. That's dropped to 121.5. Nothing dramatic. The three-point shooting has dropped a decent bit. They were number 1 in the NBA at 39.3%. They're still a respectable spot at 36.5%, but that is not in the top 5 in the NBA. So that is the biggest area of concern as a team. They have dropped off. Donovan and Darius, the leading candidates to look at if you're going to point the finger of blame at any 2 players for the decline in three-point percentage. We'll get to their individual statistics here in a second. From an offensive rating standpoint, the Cavs had the number 1 offensive rating in basketball prior to the All-Star break at 121.9. That has fallen to 120.6 in the month of March. They are 12th in the NBA in offensive rating. That's 11 spots lower than their spot for the majority of the season, which has been the number 1 spot. And from a defensive rating, it is actually almost identical, 111.5 pre-All-Star break, 117.7 post-All-Star break. So when you look at just the numbers, as you can see on the screen, there is not a giant drop-off in any capacity in terms of the Cavs' overall scoring output, their offensive rating, and defensively, they are just about at the exact same spot they were prior to the All-Star break. But over this 3-game stretch, the Cavs have struggled to get stops when needed. You saw Los Angeles go supernova in the second half of that game on Tuesday, putting up, I believe, if my number and my math is correct, and I'm not switching up things, scoring 76 points in the final 2 quarters of the game. Last night against Sacramento, the Cavs did a great job forcing the Kings into difficult shots in the first quarter. They held them to just 15 points in the first quarter, a season low for Sacramento in any quarter played this season. They had not scored 15 points or fewer in any quarter. The Cavs defense was incredible to start that game. And then over the final 3 quarters of that game, they gave up 108 points. That's unacceptable. If Cleveland is going to win the NBA championship, they cannot be giving up 108 points in 36 minutes of basketball. Now, granted, Sacramento got hot in the second half. Cleveland had a ton of sloppy turnovers that led to easy runouts and buckets. Against the Clippers, Bogdanovich got hot. Kawhi was 5 of 6 from 3. Zubac was grabbing every offensive rebound. That leads to those increased scoring outputs from their opponents. But lo and behold, at the end of the day, defense is about stopping your opponent from scoring, and the possession ends when you secure a rebound. The defensive possession does not end until you, your teammate, another one of your teammates, has the ball and it is going in the opposite direction. And over the last 3 games, Cleveland has struggled to end possessions with a defensive rebound. You saw Zubac on Tuesday completely dominate Cleveland on the glass. He had 20 rebounds himself in that game. The Cavs as a team had 29. Zubac almost out-rebounded Cleveland as a team. Zubac is one player. Now, when you look at the bigs in that Clippers game, Jared Allen had 8 rebounds. Mobley had 3, Wade had 3, Hunter had 1. The 3 bigs that played for Cleveland that weren't named Jared Allen had a combined 7 rebounds, and that is not going to cut it against the best teams in basketball. So first and foremost, from a big picture standpoint, I don't think there's any reason to drastically flip out about the Cavs 3-game losing streak, but you do have to look at some of the defensive intensity, some of the rebounding, some of those possessions late in games where the Cavs got hunted, whether it was Malik Monk or DeMar DeRozan last night or Kawhi or James Harden on Tuesday night, picking out the weak link in the Cavs defense and attacking them one-on-one, especially with Isaac Okoro on the bench. I would have loved to seen Isaac in some of those situations with a chance to get a stop when needed. It didn't happen. Kenny decided to keep him on the bench. He's done almost everything right this season. I'm not one to really argue with these individual decisions on a game-by-game basis, but when you need to stop late in the game, I think Isaac is still one of their best point-of-attack defenders. Would have liked to seen him in there. So that's one thing. Defensively, got to figure out how to get stops and how to end possessions with the defensive rebound. Give other teams credit for making shots, but Cleveland has to end up some of those possessions with defensive rebounds. Another thing I noticed over this 3-game streak or skid, whatever you want to call it, is the Cavs, who had been the number 2 team in basketball in terms of 3-point makes per game, has been outscored from the 3-point line by Orlando, by Los Angeles, and by Sacramento. And when you look at their team ranks on the season in terms of 3-point makes per game, you can see the Cavs with 16 makes per game. They're the second highest 3-point make team in basketball. The Magic dead last, fewer than 11 threes. The Clippers and the Kings, 26 and 24 respectively, about 12.5 per game. You would assume Cleveland would have a gigantic advantage beyond the arc, but over this 3-game skid, Orlando, Los Angeles, and Sacramento all outscored Cleveland from beyond the 3-point line. That simply is a factor of 2 things. A, Cleveland missed a few shots that they had been making. We showed you these numbers before, but that 3-point percentage falling from 39 to 36, well, that's part of the reason the Cavs haven't scored as much from beyond the 3-point line. And then secondly, give the Clippers credit. They made some tough shots. Give the Kings some credit. They made some tough shots. Anthony Black on Sunday made 2 corner threes for Orlando. Those are shots you live with. Other teams made shots. So once again, another thing I've noticed, but nothing to freak out over. I think it's more of an anomaly than it is some kind of trend that we should keep an eye on moving forward. After last night's loss to the Kings, Donovan Mitchell told Chris Fedor of Cleveland.com this: "The sky is not falling, but we have some," insert explicit word, "to figure out. This is part of it. We have to be better. That's no lie. I feel like this is something that is really going to help us going forward. You don't grow without going through things." And Donovan, I could not agree more with that sentiment. The Cavs at 56-10, prior to this 3-game losing streak, had faced very little adversity this season. And on the one hand, that is incredible. That is a testament to how good Cleveland has been. That is a credit to Donovan and Darius and Evan and Jared and DeAndre and Max and everyone else who plays, and Kenny Atkinson and the staff and Kobe Altman and everyone involved with that organization for putting this team in a position to win night in and night out, and not just win, but dominate teams. They had a plus 11 win margin, point differential, whatever you want to call that stat. They were winning games by an average of 11 points and change on that 56-10 start to the season. Now, after this 3-game skid that's dropped, it is still in an impressive range, but not in a historic range like it was before. But the Cavs had basically, when you simplify it down to its most basic form, had blown the brakes off every team they've played this year, and it had the 3rd fewest clutch minutes described by NBA.com in the entire league. They had very rarely found themselves in these situations where they had to score, where they had to get stops, and the game depended on whether or not they could execute. In those last 3 games, when they all lost, Orlando, Sacramento, Los Angeles, the Cavs did not perform up to par to their standard in the clutch. And I think there are 2 big takeaways, really 1, but 2 we'll talk about, that are worth dissecting from that particular asset of the Cavaliers' recent struggles. First and foremost is the hunger factor to it. Guys, I know this is going to sound crazy. Maybe not crazy, but out there. And I know that it is hard sometimes to believe that not every game to an NBA player is Game 7 of the NBA Finals. But the Cavs have essentially locked up the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. ESPN Analytics has the Cleveland with a 99.9% chance to be the 1 seed in the East. They currently have a 6-game lead over the Boston Celtics for the 1 seed. For Cleveland to fall below Boston, Cleveland's losing streak would essentially, and there are different ways to do this, I'm just going to make up numbers for the sake of making this simple, would have to lose in their final 14 games. Cleveland would have to go, let's say, 3-11, and Boston would have to go 10-2 or 11-2 is basically what would have to happen. Could it happen? Yes. Will it happen? I'd be shocked beyond belief if it did. Cleveland, for all intents and purposes, has locked up the 1 seed in the East. Donovan Mitchell, Kenny Atkinson, Darius Garland, and Jared Allen have all come out and said, we do not care about having the best record in the NBA, which would ensure home court advantage over Oklahoma City if those two teams met in the finals. Donovan, Kenny, Darius, and Jared have all said that. So don't get mad at me if you disagree. I'm just telling you what the players and the coaches of the Cleveland Cavaliers have said in front of a public audience with a microphone just like this in front of their face. They said they do not care. If you disagree, more power to you. I think they should care. I would like to see them play for something down the stretch, which will lead us into our second point, because I think there's a valid reason and a valid motivation to have on the back burner when you're trying to get through the proverbial dog days of the summer, or the dog days of the season in this case, which is March. Cleveland, part of the reason I believe they lost 2 of the last 3 games was not because of hunger against Orlando. They lost to Orlando because they couldn't buy a shot down the stretch. But I think part of the reason they ended up losing to the Clippers and part of the reason they ended up losing to the Kings was simply those 2 teams were more desperate and played with a level of hunger that Cleveland could not match. Cleveland has locked up the 1 seed. Sacramento and the Clippers are fighting for not only playoff positioning, but the ability to avoid the play-in. They have legitimate stakes in each of their remaining 10, 12, 13, 14, however many games they have left. Cleveland, yes, they have stakes, but on a night-to-night basis, no, they don't. Not really. And that's one of the more underrated parts of regular season success, is the hunger to get up and play for 48 minutes, 82 times throughout the regular season. And for the first 66 games of the season, it felt for the most part that Cleveland never had these off nights. And they never had a night where you had to question, did they really want to play tonight? Did they really feel like they wanted to be there? And 2 of the last 3 games, I don't include Orlando, I include the first 2 games of this West Coast road trip, there were stretches of basketball where you said, I'm not 100% sure Cleveland was really up for this one. It didn't feel like they had matched the intensity of their opponent. And that's normal. That happens. That is why teams lose to teams that are inferior talent-wise to them throughout the regular season. That's how teams like the San Antonio Spurs can beat the New York Knicks last night. Or that's how teams like the Minnesota Timberwolves can come back from 25 down to beat the Oklahoma City Thunder earlier last week or 2 weeks ago. And that's how the teams like the Pistons and teams like Golden State of late can knock off other teams. Denver, without Jokic the day, beat the Warriors. Why? Because they were hungrier. They played better. They played with more intensity. It looked like Golden State was sleepwalking for 48 minutes on a nationally televised game. The Cavs, for the most part, have avoided those we don't have it games this season. But the last 2 and the first 2 on this West Coast road trip, it felt more like they were just going through the motions of a basketball game than attempting to rip out the throat of their opponent. And that's okay. It won't be okay if in 2 weeks we're back here on a Thursday with 1 week to go in the regular season and saying the Cavs haven't turned it around yet. Then I'll start to panic. But right now, in the start of a 5-game road trip with a 6-game lead over the Celtics with 14 games to go for Cleveland, I don't think it's a big deal. And is it 14? It's 13 games to go. 13 games to play for Cleveland. I just don't think it's that big of a deal. I think that's the natural ups and downs of a roller coaster length NBA season. There are going to be peaks. There are going to be valleys. There are going to be the ups and the downs and the lulls and the highs and everything in between. That's basketball. And that's why only 2 teams in the history of the league, there are 30 teams each season. There have been over 75 seasons in the NBA, and only 2 teams have ever won 70 games in the regular season because it's damn near impossible to keep that intensity night in, night out over the course of a 6-7 month season. So no, I'm not panicking. I am, though, keeping an eye on how Donovan and Darius finish out the season. When you look at the numbers, and I'll pull them up in one sec, you can see that both Darius and Donovan have taken a step back in terms of their efficiency here post All-Star break. Now, before I show you the numbers, before I scare anybody by showing numbers that don't paint the Cavs 2 All-Star guards in the brightest of lights, I do think it's worth mentioning that, A, there could be 1.5 million reasons for the dip in efficiency. Donovan's been dealing with a little bit of groin soreness. Darius missed a few games with a hip injury. They could just be a little bit tired. It could just be the wear and tear of a season. It could just be they were shooting at such a lights out clip to begin the year that there was a natural regression to the mean. It could just be a little bit of a slump. It could mean absolutely nothing long-term for Cleveland. But I will say, if Donovan and Darius shoot like they are now in the playoffs, the Cavs are going to be sorely disappointed. I don't believe Cleveland can win an NBA championship, can knock off Boston in an Eastern Conference Finals, if Darius and Donovan are continuing to shoot the way they have post All-Star break when April and May roll around. I have a lot of confidence that they'll snap out of this slump and get back to shooting at a higher clip. But the point is, right now, there's no need to be in a frantic panic. But it is worth taking a note and just keeping it in the back of your head. Why are these two struggling? And what's causing those struggles? If it's just a little shooting slump, so be it. It's a 10, 12 game sample size. Nothing to change your expectations for. But just pointing out as something to notice. We'll start with Donovan, who pre-All-Star break was averaging 23.9 points per game, shooting 45.4% from the floor, 39.1% from three, had a true shooting percentage of 58.6, and was playing 31.3 minutes per game. Post-All-Star break, the scoring's up almost a full point, up to 24.8 points per game, but the field goal percentage has dropped to the low 41%. That's over 4 points in a drop. The three-point percentage dropped almost 9 points from 39.1 to 30.3%. The true shooting percentage, 58.6% pre-All-Star break, 55% post-All-Star break, and he's playing just about half a minute, about 28 seconds to be exact, more post-All-Star break than he was pre-All-Star break. So Donovan taking more shots now, but making them at a less efficient clip. The field goal percentage, you want it to be around 45%. The three-point percentage, if you're going to shoot as often and frequently from three as Donovan does, you are not going to win at a high level if your best scorer is shooting 30% from three on the level of volume that Donovan shoots with. So that's Donovan. Donovan's proven time after time, though, that he's come through in the playoffs. He has one of the highest points per game average in his career for a playoff performer. In Utah, he carried the Jazz to playoff series wins. Against the Magic last season, he scored 50 points on the road in a Game 6 loss to Orlando. He scored 30-plus in the win against Boston. He was the entire Cavaliers offense in that Magic series. I'm less worried about him. I am a little bit more worried about Darius Garland. As you can see these numbers here, an even bigger, more drastic drop-off. The points per game for Darius, down from 21.6 to 17.8. The field goal percentage, down 11.6 points in terms of efficiency. 49.8% pre-All-Star break, 38.2% post-All-Star break. His three-point shooting percentage, 43.1%, down to 31.2%. His true shooting percentage, 63.1%, post-All-Star break, 50.8%, and he's playing more minutes per game now than he was pre-All-Star break. Darius suffered that injury against the Knicks. He got pushed in the back by Karl-Anthony Towns. He fell, looked like he smacked his face on the ground. It ended up being a hip injury. He missed a couple of games. He's come back, and he just hasn't been as efficient. Part of the reason the rest of his offense has fallen is he was super elite. And I mean super, super, super top-notch, 96th percentile elite in terms of getting to the paint and in that floater, that not at the paint, but short-range shot, cleaning the glass under the 96th percentile. Since the injury, that's dropped into about the 31st percentile. A gigantic drop. And for Darius in particular, he's still able to get to his spots. He's just not finishing at the same frequency. And for Darius, he needs to be able to finish those short-range shots at a high clip because that unlocks everything else. Yes, we know Darius can shoot the three, but when he's getting to the paint and pulling up from 6-7 feet, whether it be the floater, whether it be kissing it off the glass, the teardrop, the little jump shot, that puts the defender who's then guarding Allen, Mobley, whoever the big is in the game, in a pickle. Do you come out and do you protect the rim and force Darius to dump it off? Do you stay back and give Darius the open little 7-foot, 8-foot jump shot? What do you do? And when the defense is on its heels and has to react to Darius, and Darius is making them pay for whatever decision the defender makes, that's when the Cavs are at their most effective. But when Darius isn't making that shot, the defense isn't helping off, which is cutting down his assist numbers. The player guarding Darius can get up higher, take away some of the space that Darius creates on his three-point shot, making that number fall. And then when he's getting into the paint, Darius isn't looking for a shot initially because he's cold. He's looking to pass. But when the defense is forcing him to take it by not helping, well, then he's not coming up with confidence, and that's led to a giant decrease as well. So once again, nothing to totally panic over. Nothing to totally, it's not worth going crazy over, but it is worth pointing out that that is part of the reason that Darius's numbers have fallen. And once again, it could very, 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 very well just be the result of Darius and Donovan going through a bit of a shooting slump. That happens all the time throughout the league. It happens to players all the time. And if that's the case, the Cavs are going to be fine for the playoffs. But if this is something bigger, I stand by my point that the Cavs can't win an NBA Finals and can't hoist the Larry O'Brien trophy if Darius and Donovan are both shooting 40% or lower from the field and 31% or lower from three. So don't take out the panic button. Don't start freaking out. The Cavs are just as much a contender today as they were prior to the loss on Sunday to the Orlando Magic. But I do think they have some things to clean up along the way if they want to eventually end the season as the last team standing in the NBA. We are going to wrap up this in 1 second, but we are going to say goodbye to our Bleacher Report audience. We appreciate everyone tuning in on Bleacher Report. If you like what you heard, give me a follow on Twitter at MikeLucasTV. We will see you next week on this edition of the Cavaliers weekly broadcast on the Bleacher Report app. To answer the couple questions in the comments we got on YouTube, do I think the Boston Celtics have a chance at the 1 seed? That's from Tyler Gross. Yes. I answered that earlier. No, I don't think they have a chance at the 1 seed. I think Cleveland has that all but wrapped up. And then provider number 1 says, this episode is only available on my personal channel, not on UCSS. Yes, that is correct. We're going to be doing these Thursday streams on my personal channel because it is also streamed to the Bleacher Report app. So it's a little cross promotion, but not full cross promotion. So if you like this, subscribe to my YouTube channel. I do sometimes, every once in a while, a couple of random one-off streams on this. It's mostly UCSS, but support your boy, support the Cavs, and we will see you next week. I'm Mikey McNuggets. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Peace.